Stone Cold Steve Austin and Vince McMahon as number 1 and 2 of the Royal Rumble after months of war between them. A bounty of $100,000 for the one who manages to eliminate the Texas Rattlesnake. A brutal and legendary I Quit match between The Rock and Mankind. The first time in history that a woman, Chyna, participated in the Royal Rumble. A music and a tagline, "No Chance in Hell," which speaks to many wrestling fans since it has become Mr. McMahon's iconic theme song in the meantime. All of this is in the same event, and not just anyone, the Royal Rumble 1999. In this video, you will discover or rediscover this show and see all the elements that make it really great according to me. You are on the wrestling paradise, while the 1999 Royal Rumble is one of the most memorable of all time. Let's go! Before I tell you why I love this Royal Rumble and what makes it great, let me introduce it to you quickly, so that you can realize what an incredible event it was. You should know that it took place on January 24th, 1999, in the middle of the Attitude Era, during which WWE achieved its best ratings ever on television, and where wrestling was mainstream, a real cultural phenomenon. And we can see it in the number of pay-per-view buys for this Royal Rumble. And it's not just any number, hang on to your seat. 650,000. Can you only imagine that this is the second best-selling Rumble of all time, just behind the one of 2002? That's almost 3 times more than WrestleMania 13, for example, or 19,000 more pay-per-view buys than WrestleMania 19. It clearly illustrates WWE's success at the time. It was a show that took place in Anaheim, California, in the Arrowhead Pond, which has since then been renamed the Honda Center. And this event had a notorious tagline, brace yourself. No chance in hell. Does it ring a bell in your head? If so, it's quite normal. It's the title of Vince McMahon's legendary theme song. And what's even crazier is that, for this show, this song was both the music of the event, but it was also the first time that the boss of the Stamford Federation used it as his theme song. Isn't it amazing? Other than that, what you should know before diving into this 1999 Rumble is that we are at the heart of the rivalry between Stone Cold Steve Austin and Mr. McMahon. For months, there had been a war between the Texas Rattlesnake, who was the rebellious employee, and Vince, the business leader who didn't want this beer-drinking redneck full of finger gestures and insults to represent his beautiful company by being champion. So, as you can imagine, McMahon was doing everything in his power to screw Austin and put all possible obstacles in his way, so that he wouldn't keep his title when he got it, or that he would have no chance in hell, pun intended, to regain it. In reaction to all of this, Stone Cold often taunted his boss by invading the arena with a Zamboni or assaulting him in his hospital room. In the end, this Rumble was the last chance for Austin to have a title shot. In this case at WrestleMania. An opportunity that he has already struggled to get by having to beat The Undertaker in a buried alive match to qualify for it. But at the Rumble itself, it was going to be much worse. You won't believe it. He had been drawn as number 1, which meant that he was going to have to stay at least 50 minutes in the match, and that he was going to have to put the other 29 participants out of harm's way. As if that wasn't enough, Mr. McMahon had promised a bounty of $100,000 to the wrestler who would eliminate the Rattlesnake from the Rumble. And wait, there's more. Vince was going to participate in the Rumble himself, entering as number 2. We had also seen him train in hilarious vignettes where he was chasing chickens, for example. It was also the first time ever he was really going to wrestle. Do you realize how Austin really had everything against him? We can say that the title, which Mankind held at that time, even if The Rock, the boss's protege, absolutely wanted to regain it, was very far away for the Rattlesnake. Anyway, now you know the whole context around this Royal Rumble 1999. Get ready to be shocked, because nothing happened as we could have imagined in this crazy show. So make sure to stay until the end of this video. Believe me, you won't regret it. First of all, let me sell you the matches we had on this card, which, let's say, went straight to the point, and where the focus was mainly on the Rumble and the title match. At first, on this card, we had a confrontation between the Big Boss Man, this excellent heel and loyal henchman of Vince McMahon's corporation, and Road Dogg, who was really over with his catchphrases that the public shouted with him. As an appetizer, we also had a Ken Shamrock against Billy Gunn, a styles clash between the intense former UFC fighter and the member of the New Age Outlaws, whose record was especially to have shown his butt to the whole world on multiple occasions. X-Pac, who was part of D-Generation X, was going to defend his European title, a belt that has disappeared in the meantime, by the way, against the vampire Gangrel. And to top off this whole first part of the show, we even had the strap match for the women's title between the beautiful Sable and the crazy Luna. Then, the more serious things will start with an I Quit match, the stipulation that I personally love, where the wrestler can only win by making his opponent say the words I quit, and where everything is allowed, between champion Mankind and the number one contender, The Rock. Let me say that it promises to be a lot of fun. And the main event will of course be the Royal Rumble, where Austin and McMahon will therefore be number 1 and 2. So, what do you think about it? Honestly, between us, isn't this an attractive card, especially the last 2 matches? Who will be champion at the end of the show? Who will win the Rumble and earn a title shot in the main event of WrestleMania? Anyway, take a seat, because I'm going to tell you about the match between Big Boss Man and Road Dogg. And I must say that it more or less fulfilled the role it was given. It was like a 10-minute appetizer between 2 mid-carders, but still the audience reacted to it widely. Personally, I was really impressed how Road Dogg, arriving for his match and doing his whole routine in which he introduces himself, knowing that he was the hardcore champion at that time, was really loved by the fans. He had reactions that main eventers of the more recent years would have been delighted to have, and it shows that even where the secondary guys from the Attitude Era were not there at all to fill in, that they had earned their spot by finding a way to make the fans react. What I liked in this match was the heatish behavior of the Big Boss Man, who said to the commentator Jerry Lawler to tell the whole world who the man is, namely himself, of course. The heel will win and bring a first victory to the corporation, which was the first step for a successful evening for Vince McMahon, even if the best was yet to come. The match between Ken Shamrock and Billy Gunn, on the other hand, was based on a rather funny element that took place. Be prepared to be shocked. Billy showed his butt to Shamrock's sister, who happened to be at ringside in a previous show, which made Shamrock completely lose it. And let's say he was also not the most relaxed guy usually, to say the least. It should also be noted that Shamrock was not only Intercontinental Champion at that time, but also Tag Team Champion with the Big Boss Man, and that he was also part of the corporation. I have to admit that it wasn't the most interesting match to watch, because the crowd wasn't really into it, but also because Billy Gunn is much better as a heel, according to me. It suited him better to be a cocky pretty boy character. The thing that I like the most in the end is the fatal ankle lock which will offer the victory to Shamrock, who really lived it intensely. He's invested in his character, that's for sure, and that's a quality even more with his UFC background. The European title match between X-Pac and Gangrel was even shorter, about 6 minutes, and was also there to warm up the viewers in a way, as if we were going to the most important matches of the evening, by ensuring that the audience still had maximum energy. I still liked Gangrel's theme song, which Edge used at SummerSlam 2021 since he had been a disciple of Gangrel at the time and a member of the Brood. Gangrel was quite a character, not very reassuring, but it is undeniable that we believe in him. Personally, when I watch him, I really see Gangrel. I don't see David Heath, who's pretending to be a vampire. In the end, it was a fairly quick victory for X-Pac in a match that was refereed, listen to this, by Teddy Long, the future general manager of SmackDown. The women's title match between Sable and Luna had the originality of being a strap match, which is rare, and it should be noted that Sable had been attacked by Luna a few hours before the Rumble at Heat. In my opinion, the whole point of this match was to highlight Sable, to make her more than just a pretty woman. Although I must also say that Shane McMahon, Vince's son and a member of the corporation, was great on commentary, and he was completely anti-Sable. The moments when he called Vince my pops always made me laugh, personally. Sable would eventually win thanks to an interference by a mystery woman from the audience, who will actually turn out to be Tori. So, at that moment, after 1 hour, are you ready for the big WWE title I Quit match between champion Mankind and The Rock? In your opinion, at that time, who would you have considered as the favorite to win? Because it was very tight on paper, believe me. On the one hand, Mankind, one of the versions of the great Mick Foley, had just been champion for the first time on January 4th, being greatly helped by Stone Cold to beat The Rock. But it didn't come out of a hat. For months he had been one of the most legit but also craziest guys in the WWE, since in June 1998, about 7 months before, he had his famous Hell in a Cell match against The Undertaker at King of the Ring, in which he had notably fallen from the top of the cage and pushed all the limits of pain that a wrestler must endure in a ring. You should also know that he had been Vince McMahon's protege for a while, his golden boy to oppose Steve Austin, and his henchman to get rid of the Rattlesnake. But at Survivor Series, a few months earlier, Mankind was betrayed by Vince, and he had the unpleasant surprise of discovering that the boss's new protege was now The Rock, who had won his first WWE title at that Survivor Series. The one who was nicknamed the corporate champion at that moment was on the rise, with multiple catchphrases that entertained the fans, an overflowing charisma, and to be honest, it was my favorite version of The Rock. Do you prefer his 2012-2013 version, for example, where he was bold with a slightly higher pitched voice and almost trying too hard to be liked by the fans, according to me? Or the one from 1999, where, even when he will turn face a few months later, he was kind of a mix between Elvis Presley and Tony Montana, who trash-talked everyone with exceptional gimmicks? Personally, I really prefer how he was in 1999. And of course, I invite you to come and discuss it in the comments if you disagree. We also had a promo of The Rock backstage just before the match, in which he really impressed me. He was there with Michael Hayes, and he said with a very natural and spontaneous tone most of his catchphrases. SmackDown Hotel, The Rock says, millions and millions, Jabroni Drive, Know Your Role Boulevard, Rudy Poo, If You Smell What The Rock Is Cooking, and so on. We can say that this is really Rocky's little universe, but where he impresses me is that to say all these expressions, there's a very good chance that this promo was written and that he memorized it, but yet he managed to deliver it in a way that sounded totally authentic, without seeming artificial at all. On the contrary, he was full of confidence and he was really awesome. For the record, this is a period when he was not wrestling in his trunk as he was used to, and when he had some kind of sweater and a jogger pants in the ring. And in fact, the reason was very simple. He had an operation in which he had fat removed from his chest, and this outfit was actually meant to hide the scars for a few weeks. In this I Quit match, the two men will really destroy themselves for about 22 minutes. And I'm not afraid to say it's one of the most chaotic matches I've ever seen. For a very simple reason, and we'll get back to it. The multiple chair shots to the head, which have since then been forbidden by WWE. There are two elements in particular in this I Quit stipulation that I think are really great. They can go anywhere in the arena, and the referee always has a microphone so that eventually one of the wrestlers utters the words I quit. What I love about that is there's not only suspense about whether he will say it or not, but also the fact it can allow one to cut short promos with trash talking in the middle of a match, which is always entertaining. Even more so with The Rock. For example, we will hear him insult Mankind several times with all his expressions, which I thought was super funny. And concerning Foley, as he was more and more suffering, we couldn't wait to find out what he was going to say into the microphone, in front of a Rocky who was trash talking him non-stop, which he will even do in the commentator's headphones. At some point, Mankind will even tell him, "You will have to kill me." And it was so brutal. Not only will they take the fight everywhere, even in the middle of the fence, with in particular a spot where Rocky throws Mankind from the stands on the table with electrical equipment, which will cause big sparks, electrocute him and cut off the power in the arena for a few seconds. But above all, at some point, The Rock puts handcuffs on Mankind, who can therefore no longer use his arms, and who will be helpless when the Brahma Bull gives him not 9 chair shots, Not 10 chair shots, but 11 big chair shots in the head. What a crazy thing to see. Did this violence shock you too? Mankind is bleeding. We're going to feel bad for him. It was mind-blowing. And The Rock himself once said that all the things Foley allowed him to do to him were incredible. It will lead to the finish of this match, which is also extraordinarily creative, I think. While Mankind is lying on the floor on the ramp, face to the ground and looking exhausted after all these chair shots, The Rock sticks the microphone to his mouth without us really seeing Mankind's head, and then, are you ready for it? We hear the words, "I quit." Has the superhuman Foley given up? Was it too much for him? The answer is no, but we won't know that at the Rumble, but the next day on Monday Night Raw. In fact, at the exact moment when The Rock held the microphone up to Mankind's head, who was out, it was a recording of him who had said "I quit" a few hours earlier on the Heat show that had been broadcast. A moment in which he predicted what The Rock was going to say in this match. Can you imagine the originality of this finish? Do you understand the subtlety? Don't you honestly think it's genius to broadcast a recording of a person speaking to make it look like he is saying these words live? I am really full of admiration when I see this kind of imagination from the WWE and Mick Foley's courage in this match. And the letter told that it was not even the finish they had originally planned. Initially, they wanted to go see Mick Foley's children who were in the audience, and that, seeing their concern and fear, Mankind would say he quits. But Mick was afraid his children would not seem concerned or terrified enough, because, knowing them, he knew that his children saw him as an unstoppable superhero, but also that they were fans of The Rock, and that the latter had even spoken to them before the match backstage, promising them that he would never hurt their father. What's even crazier is that Foley, to change the finish that was planned, had also told the writer Vince Russo on the phone that he had a head injury that could easily be reopened so that he would bleed during the match. But the truth is, he didn't have an injury that could be reopened at all, and that he did it himself right after that call with Vince Russo. Isn't that crazy? It was a war that I found amazing in terms of suspense, shock, brutality, chemistry between the two men, creativity. We can only respect their performance, and in particular, Mankind's resilience. And so it is The Rock who comes out of this pay-per-view as WWE Champion. Are you ready to rumble? Was Stone Cold going to overcome all the obstacles and go face The Rock at WrestleMania to finally take back his title that Mr. McMahon had managed to make him lose without him ever being able to regain it since September 1998? The suspense was huge, and it was so interesting. Who can sit at my table and tell me, "I don't want to see this Rumble, man. It lacks suspense and high stakes"? Because we have to be very clear about this. We had every reason to be enthusiastic. For the first time, Austin and McMahon, who had been at war for months, were facing each other in a match. There was also a huge suspense about this 100,000 bounty for whoever would eliminate Stone Cold. That should give extra motivation to the other 28 men to try everything to get him over the top rope, don't you agree? And, in addition, Austin and McMahon were the numbers 1 and 2, which guaranteed to get straight into the heart of the matter with the most exciting stuff. You're going to think I'm being a salty Johnny, but man, I hate those rumbles where the superstars all come at the end of the match, and when you are bored for many minutes with only mid-carders. When it happened, I was always disappointed, whereas putting 2 or 3 interesting superstars from the very beginning, that guarantees to never get bored, like when Brock Lesnar was number 1 at the Royal Rumble 2020, or when the one in 2008 started with The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. And as if all of that wasn't already enough, we were also going to have, for the first time in history, a woman participating in the Royal Rumble, Chyna. And I'm telling you, to me, this 1999 edition of the Rumble largely lived up to the expectations. I would also like to point out that a few hours before, on the Heat show, Austin arrived at the arena driving a monster truck limousine, which adds a new chapter to his history with spectacular vehicles. I was so happy to start straight away with Stone Cold and McMahon. Starting with the most exciting rivalry and suspecting that there is a good chance that everything will unravel in the last minutes of the match, that promises to have them both in the match for well over 50 minutes, which means 50 interesting minutes to enjoy, no matter what. And the structure of the match really surprised me. We started with Austin against McMahon, who also had an impressive physique. But soon enough, Vince will try to run away and will be chased in the arena while the traditional match continues in the ring. It's really super original to have on one side a fight between the Rattlesnake and the Boss outside of the ring, and to follow at the same time the normal Rumble, which goes on as if nothing happened. But there's a big surprise. Be prepared to be shocked. McMahon took Austin to an ambush in the ladies' room, where the corporation was waiting for Stone Cold to beat him up and leave him for dead. At that moment, he will be taken away on a stretcher and then be transported to the hospital by an ambulance. And then we can think several things. Either it's the end of the Rumble for him and we won't see him again. Either he comes back as a hero and wins the Rumble. Or maybe another scenario. What would you have thought? At that moment, Mr. McMahon will quietly go to commentary and strut around in ringside because his anti-Stone Cold plan seems to have worked. What I find notable in the rest of the Rumble is to see Edge in it, who was only 25 years old at that time. To also see Gilbert, the ridiculous wrestler who is a parody of the Goldberg of the rival WCW company. To have the return to WWE of the juggernaut Mabel, who will be kidnapped in the middle of the match by the Ministry of Darkness, the dark faction of The Undertaker, of which he will become one of the disciples by being renamed Viscera. And I must also say that I was impressed by the incredible number of various characters in this Rumble, by all this identity that it exudes. There was the bizarre and eccentric Goldust, the MMA fighters Steve Blackman and Dan Severn, the pimp character of The Godfather, who was very over, the sexual chocolate Mark Henry, the erotic movies actor Val Venus, without forgetting, of course, the dangerous monster Kane, who will be chased by nurses from the asylum in the middle of the match. As we said, Chyna also participated by entering as number 30 and eliminating Mark Henry, just before getting thrown out by none other than Steve Austin. No, you're not dreaming. The Rattlesnake has indeed returned to the Rumble. He ended up coming back in the ambulance with great determination. And when Vince saw that, his acting was really extraordinary, as always. This will lead to the finale, which is perhaps the most shocking of all time. Despite the 100,000 bounty on him, Austin survives and eliminates 8 competitors in total to find himself alone against his ultimate enemy. He will completely beat up the Boss, but at the moment when The Rock, Vince's protege, distracts Stone Cold from the ring apron, McMahon manages to eliminate the Rattlesnake. The shock is tremendous. Mr. McMahon, the one who was wrestling for the first time that night, won the prestigious Royal Rumble, and he can have beers with his allies. A huge provocation, since it is one of Stone Cold's gimmicks. It's a result that will be talked about a lot. But personally, I think it was excellent because it was unpredictable. We had no idea what was going to happen for WrestleMania. About this decision to make Mr. McMahon the winner of this Rumble, the writer Vince Russo said, "Such an unpredictable decision opens up creative possibilities. We wanted everything to be new and unheard of every week. From Survivor Series, we knew that Vince would win the Royal Rumble. And you, what do you think of this choice? A very shocking and bold stunt, or a poor taste joke?" Obviously, we can acknowledge one thing. After this show, we're dying to see the next day's Raw. Can you only imagine the shock this must have created among the millions of people who watch the shows every week? WWE really mastered the art of keeping the audience in suspense at the time. And that, for me, is the most important thing. To make you want to watch the shows and follow them every week like a TV series. In the end, as you will have understood, I am a fan of this show. And in terms of production, I would say that it had a strong identity without being very spectacular. Let's say it was effective. The stage was quite simple, with a kind of circle through which the wrestlers arrived, like some kind of tube, with no Titantron. It certainly looked a little weak compared to the Royal Rumble 2006 stage, for example, which was worthy of a movie set. But I have the impression that during the Attitude Era, creating tremendous stages wasn't really a thing. On the other hand, it was cool to see red ropes with a black wing apron with the logo of the show. It always has more identity than the modern white ropes, which are really lame according to me, and soulless. In terms of production, what I remember the most about this Royal Rumble 1999 is this consistency between the tagline of the show, "No Chance in Hell," that was on the poster where we also saw some kind of tombstone and Austin's head. A tombstone that was in the graphics of the show too. In the theme song, of course, and in the promo at the beginning of the show, which highlighted this idea. The WWE also spoiled us with beautiful pyro at the beginning of the show, in the ring and on the stage, which is always a great way to start. My only little regret on a personal standpoint is that it was a period when Jim Ross, the best commentator of all time, was absent because of Bell palsy. Which is too bad, since he probably would have had incredible reactions when Austin was back in the Rumble, for example, or when McMahon won. He was replaced by a less authentic and less passionate Michael Cole, for my taste. Although, fortunately, there was still the great Jerry Lawler, who, as a heel commentator, was witty, funny, excellent in his gimmick, especially when he rejoiced at every moment when Stone Cold was in trouble. And finally, I would like to say that having Howard Finkel as the announcer with the bass in his voice, which is a huge strength in combat sports for example, just like the announcer Bruce Buffer in UFC, who is able to hype us for a match just by his talent, that was really great. For all of these reasons, I loved this Royal Rumble. It could certainly have had more exciting matches in the first hour of the show and a more epic stage, but with such global creativity, such twists and swerves, a huge star power and plenty of charisma, such as Stone Cold, Mr McMahon, The Rock, Mankind, The Undertaker, Triple H, and so on. It was stupendous. Long live the Royal Rumble 1999 and long live the Attitude Era. Now you know why I love this 1999 Royal Rumble and why it entertained me a lot. Come and share your opinion in the comments if you are perhaps less convinced by this show or just as positive about it. If there is a Royal Rumble that you find much more memorable or not. At the end of the day, the idea is to discuss all of this together. To exchange our points of view with respect, of course. Let's never forget that we all love wrestling and that we form a great and beautiful community. We can say that this topic raises a lot of questions. I hope you had a good time watching this video, and I invite you to stay in the paradise of wrestling to look at some other ones. See you right away.
And that's the bottom line, 'cause Stone Cold said so. What?